morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice radio, so today I am showing you Articuno-GX. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we looked at a blurry picture a few weeks ago. We compared it to an old Articuno-EX, and my predictions based on that, gonna go, little bit vague here and say, pretty gosh darn good. But today we have a nice clear image, and it has been translated by the lovely Autobot Tesla over on Twitter. It is in Champion Road in Japan. Not entirely sure how it's coming out over here, but it's likely to be either in our August set or in a mini set, so that's at least that. So starting off with the basics, 170 HP is pretty low for a basic GX. The only one really lower is Marshadow, and Marshadow doesn't really count because Marshadow is an anomaly. Sorry for saying Marshadow doesn't count. That does sound a bit mean when you say it like that. It is weak to metal. Not a huge problem at the moment. Could become a problem in the future when the new Solgaleo GX comes out, which is going to be amazing. It's got a retreat cost of 2, which is the very worst retreat cost in the game, but being a water Pokemon's pretty good. You get to hit weakness against most fire Pokemon like Volcanion, although do remember that these fire decks will also be playing Ho-Oh, which is not weak to water. It means you get access to Aqua Patch in order to accelerate a bit of energy, and you get access to Brooklet Hill, which could be used to just grab Articuno straight onto the bench here, although when we look at the ability in a moment, you will see why we don't necessarily want to do that. So let's start off with the ability, which is incredibly exciting and is exactly as we predicted in our earlier video. Go check it out if you don't believe me. When you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench, you may move any number of water energy from your other Pokemon to this Pokemon and then switch it into the active. Now again, as with all of this, we do need to wait for an official wording when it comes out outside of Japan, but we assume this is exactly the same as Tapu Koko's ability, which means you can move as many as you like, but you don't have to move all of them. You can move them from any Pokemon you like, and of course, when it says water energy, it means water energy, not basic water energy. So weirdly enough, counter energy would be able to be moved, but when you moved counter energy, it would then become just a colorless energy, because of course it can only be attached as, a proper counter energy to a non-EX, non-GX when you're behind on prizes. If you're behind on prizes, you can move counter energy to Articuno from any Pokemon. You just say it's a water energy. If you're not behind on prizes, you can't move it, because at that point it's just a colorless energy, and when you move it onto Articuno, it just becomes a colorless energy. Counter energy is the weird one. It does mean, in a far more straightforward example, that you could move a rainbow energy, for instance, or you could use a splash energy here. They are only water energy when they're attached, but as you are moving them from a Pokemon to Articuno, they are attached, and therefore they can be moved over using this ability. Now, this is why you wouldn't use Brooklet Hill with Articuno, because if you use Brooklet Hill, you don't get the benefit of the ability, and the ability here is what really helps. And just like Tapu Koko into Lightning decks, Articuno fits really nicely as a one-of in water decks. It's got 170 HP. Now, alright, that is low for a basic GX, or on the lower end, but it's still higher than your average water Pokemon. I mean, Empoleon's a beefy stage 2, and he's only got 160. And of course, after you use this ability, you can then take advantage of cards like Ace Roller and Max Potion to heal up the Pokemon from which you move the energy, because, well, Ace Roller and Max Potion are both good cards, but they kind of hurt your energy attachments. Max Potion discards them, Ace Roller puts them into your hand, but that's alright, ladies and gentlemen, because with this, you've already moved the energy off and you are golden. Everything we previously said about Tapu Koko with this ability still stands true with Articuno and this ability. It is great to drop as a surprise. I mean, certainly if you're playing an Empoleon deck against a Lightning deck like Raichu, for instance, it would be kind of handy to use Articuno because you don't have that weakness to Lightning like Empoleon has. It's quite good, and it helps you get set up, and it means you can drop it as a surprise out of nowhere. But of course there is a huge downside here, and the huge downside is we need a good attack to use with it. What we have initially, free energy, 130 damage. And this annoys me, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let's go for the good news first. There's a whole bunch of Pokemon, like Greninja, for instance, like Regice, although I could keep going and there's many, many, many of them, who have 130 HP. When I say Regice, I mean Registeel. And 130 means you will be getting a straight one-hit KO, whereas something like a Zoroark that generally hits 120 with a full bench would not be getting a one-hit KO. So if you're against a non-EX, non-GX deck, something like Greninja, you're going to be absolutely loving this because you're going to be doing 130. Similarly, if you're hitting for weakness, 130 doubles to 260. So even if you're against my boy Incineroar, who's got a frankly gigantic 250 HP, I still harbour hope that Blaine will make Incineroar great again. I don't actually think it will, but a man can live in hope, ladies and gentlemen. A man can live in hope. And 130, when doubled, is enough to KO any water-weak GX. So if you're hitting for weakness, you're getting an automatic KO, and there's a whole bunch of non-GX Pokemon where you're hitting 130. In that respect, I like the fact you're doing 130. The problem is here, once you add a choice band on here and start hitting GXs that are not weak, things get very, very, very bad very, very, very quickly, because it's not enough. You are getting a KO on the aforementioned Marshadow, but 160 isn't even enough to KO stuff like Tapu Lele or an opposing Articuno. This doesn't mean that this second attack is bad. It means that if you're against a deck like Greninja, until they break evolve, it's really good. And if you're against something like a Regice or a Volcanion or an Incineroar, it's really good. But a lot of the time, 130 is just not going to be enough. Although you do get to get it going in one turn, just by dropping it and moving the energy over, so that alone makes the attack better than it would have been otherwise. And that brings us to the GX attack. We assumed it would have something to do with discarding energy, and oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, it totally does. 1 water energy, discard all energy attached to both active Pokemon. Oh my goodness, there is a lot of use for this. This is where you would use Brooklet Hill. Because you use Brooklet Hill, you attach 1 water energy to Articuno, but it could just as easily be a rainbow energy, so that you could use this in any deck whatsoever. You discard the 1 energy attached to Articuno, and at the same time, you get rid of all the energy attached to your opponent's active. Maybe they've got something like a Gardevoir, which is sitting there with, I don't know, 6 energy, trying to get one-hit KOs on your Pokemon. You can bring this down, discard all 6 of their energy, while just getting rid of just your energy. Any deck that really relies on energy here, and a lot of it, you can screw over using this attack. But you can also just buy yourself a turn here. It's not going to do too much against something like a Zoroark GX, because they can just attach another double colourless. But if you are against something like the aforementioned Empoleon, you get rid of both their energy, and it can be really hard to get all the energy on Empoleon in a single turn, especially if they don't have access to counter energy. That's what this GX attack does. This GX attack basically comes along and says, now you're kind of screwed, because you've got nothing to do for a turn or two. I've only discarded 1 energy, so I feel absolutely fine with this, and I'm just going to keep setting up and have a couple of turns where you've got nothing to do. And I must stress that because this is for a single energy on a basic Pokemon, this could be very easily teched into basically any deck whatsoever. If you're having trouble with a deck like Gardevoir that piles energy on, then you use an Articuno, you play 1 Articuno and a couple of Rainbow Energy, and then you can drop it whenever you feel like it. That, ladies and gentlemen, is an awful lot of fun. Now, if we quickly compare it to the Articuno-EX on which it is based, the ability is exactly the same, except the old ability only said basic water energy, whereas we expect expect the new ability to say water energy like Tapu Koko does, which, as I've said, means you can use stuff like rainbow energy. The free energy 130 is completely new, and the other attack is interesting because it's a very different attack, but it's still an attack that goes after energy. Overall, I'm giving Articuno 4 Wassies, and if that seems high, let me explain. Firstly, it is an attacker that may have a different type of weakness that could easily be teched into a water deck, and even though the main attack isn't great, it's alright and the ability helps you get it going quicker. But then you can tech it into any deck with rainbow energy and take down stuff like Gardevoir and really screw them over, and you have an adaptable Pokemon that can fit into many different decks and should see quite a bit of play. And that pretty much is my definition of a 4 Wassie card. But I'd like to hear your definition of how good Articuno is, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! But be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, etc., head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, which is where you can do that. And do check out my video games channel with Dragon Ball Super stuff, Wassie Plays. I think you'll find stuff there to like. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.